Right, behold the turtle. He only makes progress when he sticks his neck out. It's a popular proverb that encourages people to push themselves to achieve their goals. It's also the title of Bonang Mohale's new book. He discusses ethical and principled leadership, South Africa's future, and includes insights from several of his colleagues. Mohale joins us now to discuss the book with me. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newslink and for physically coming to see us. Now, I just want to talk about the fact that you've always been a person that's been outspoken against a lot of, ills in our country that hinder our economic growth. And I think that's what this book basically is about.
For having me. I think we all begin to die when we are silent about things that genuinely matter. Leadership presupposes followership. You can't lead yourself. It needs at least 3 things to be present before you can look at yourself in the mirror and call yourself a leader. Some sort of a compelling vision, courage, but also integrity. So this African adage that says, behold the turtle, it only makes progress when its neck is stuck out. It says, if you are comfortable in your own skin, under your own shell, you don't want to risk anything, maybe that's okay. But if you want to move forward in space and in time, if you want to move the dial, if you want what's in the best interest of South Africa, Inc., a better life for all, this notion of common good, of greater good, then once in a while you need to stick your neck out so that you can move from point A to point B. But when you do that, and you are a turtle, it's possible that birds of prey lingering and hovering above might strike your head, and indeed you might die. Therefore, each time we want to change the world, let's be awake, conscious, purposeful, deliberate, that it's a dance with death. We are indeed taking a risk without which South Africa will forever be in the doldrums. But for us to be internationally competitive, then all of us, not just you and I, the 60.1 million South Africans, need to collectively say, not in our name, not now, because we are much more than what we have become. There's
a chapter that, I enjoyed in the book. It's called Troubled Countries Do Turn Around. That gave me that hope and encouragement from the title of the book. And you made an example of Rwanda. This is a country that had a genocide, that side, and it's doing so well. How do we copy that here in South Africa? Do our politicians even want to?
You see, we are called upon to be vulnerable, like the turtle. Not to be perfect, because by design we are imperfect, but we are social animals in bone and marrow. Therefore, we don't have to always be original, be earth-shattering. Sometimes we should steal unashamedly. So what Rwanda did, it looked at Singapore. Singapore's model is so simple it hurts. It says, number 1, we look at this thing called meritocracy. Number 2, we look at honesty. And number 3, we will be absolutely transparent. I mean, that's the model that they copied. So at the time that we're in the snaking queues on the 27th of April, 1994, to usher in our first democratically elected president, Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela, they were going through a genocide. 30 days, they'd killed 800,000 Tutsis. By the end of that month, 1 million of them had died. But history is replete with examples that countries that want to turn around, on average, it takes them about 20 years. 20 years later, Rwanda had turned around. No longer do they speak about Hutus and Tutsis, only Rwandans. In fact, they've got the highest number of members of parliament who are women and younger. Today in Rwanda, when you go to Kigali, you get free Wi-Fi in the buses. Ladies take their Maltese poodle on a leash at 23:30, just before midnight. They go to an ATM machine to withdraw money and they feel safe. I, as an African man in Bedfordview, I cannot go to an engine garage midday to withdraw money and come back to my car and make it safely. So there are a number of things that say we are indeed in a spot of bother until and unless all of us do something that is interventionist to turn around. Because all of us agree that this is not the country of South Africa, Nelson Mandela's dreams, the South Africa we have all been praying for. I think one or two of those things that we must do as a matter of agency is to take the top state capture miscreants to jail. Number two, we need to roll out vaccines as a matter of agency, because to us, it's a matter of life and death. But if you talk to labor, civil society, and to business, they will tell you that we probably need to do three things. We have to grow this economy, because without growth, we might as well pack up and go. Number two, we must create jobs in large numbers to have an outsized and oversized impact. You see, as business, not creating jobs in and of itself, but when you create jobs, you create markets of the future. Lastly, I think we need to ensure that we transform this economy, that it looks like us. The reason why the title is an African adage, not a French adage, is because, you see, as Africans, we must feel comfortable to archive, curate, and create our own new world. Because if we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. What Mandela did, he gave us permission to go to those places that hitherto were closed to us. He gave us permission to dream, but also to implement, to experiment, and to see whether today can be on a composite basis substantially better than yesterday. But it also says, you know, you can be in business and be comfortable to speak in your own language. When you speak to people that work for the once glorious South African Airways, they'll come to you and say, chicken or beef? You say to them, dumela mme, and say, how can I help? Because we have sent a message that says business can only be done in English. You are only professional if you speak English. You are only clever if you express yourself in English. And yet, for the people that have traveled like us, I mean, by the time I turned 40, I'd been to 100 countries. In Spain, in China, in Japan, and even in France, they are comfortable to do business in their own indigenous language. This is what Kwesi Pra refers to as ethnocide. That not only as Africans we were left alone, but not only our land was stolen, but our language, our culture, our ethnic identity. So how do we reclaim that for ourselves? Because you see, the duration of oppression is always determined by the oppressed, never by the oppressor.
I want to go back to the point that you made that Rwanda and how Kigali is looking today from 20 years ago, and how, you know, a country can make a turnaround in 20 years. We've been in a democratic state for almost 30 years now. I think it's 28 on the 27th of April. We're not close to where Rwanda is. So when do we start counting our 20 years in South Africa?
In fact, I would presuppose that we have gone backwards. Because remember, Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela inherited a technically bankrupt country. In less than 5 years, we had quadrupled the GDP growth of this country. We created truly amazing, wonderful things from the Department of Expenditure and Finance. 4 of those departments, we created the South African Revenue Service, and it became one of the top collection agencies in the world. National Treasury could compete with absolutely the best in the world. At that time, when South Africans moved into the Organization of African Unity, now the AU, we were respected. We went to the World Economic Forum. When we moved in, they would keep quiet and say, the South Africans are here. Now when you go to World Economic Forum, the people want to cough, they want to laugh, they don't know whether to feel sorry for you or what. And yet again, we don't even need to reinvent the wheel. One day, West Germany woke up and said, but as Germans, we are one people with one agenda, with great natural endowments. What we want is to be a united, unitary Germany that is nonetheless prosperous. In 20 years, They stopped investing in West Germany because it had everything. They poured all the money, the factories, the infrastructure into East Germany. In 20 years, they spoke about a united but nonetheless prosperous Germany. And so is the history that we have learned. And unfortunately, those that don't learn from history are condemned to repeat its mistakes. For me, lastly, I think it's also about giving our children permission that says, you see, as Africans, as black people, as people who live in townships, we're not poor by choice. We were made poor. Time, energy, and effort was spent to make sure that we are indeed oppressed. But 27, almost 28 years into democracy, we can't blame dromedaries Reicher and the Goede Hoop that landed in 1652 at the Cape of Good Hope. We now need to say at 27, actually, you are a teenager. You are now responsible for your own action, but also for your own future. And I think all of us collectively must do two things. First, acknowledge that none of us, business, all the social partners, have not succeeded in eradicating the legacy of apartheid. Number two, we need to say to ourselves, you see, it's about time that the good people work just as hard as the bad people in ensuring that we have a better life for all, that we improve the quality of lives of the majority of our people. Because you see, scientists would look very funny at the monkey that hoards all the bananas when all the other monkeys are starving to death. But human beings, when you do that, we put you on the cover of Forbes magazine. At what point do we say enough is enough? This notion of Ubuntu, being truly human, says I am because you are. If I've got 10 rand, it's okay if I keep 4 and I share the 6 with others, because that's how I get my joy. Because when you progress, I get better, because together we can accomplish that which on my own will take me inordinately long.
The team is telling me I've run out of time, and I'm sure Veronica is going to shout at me for this one, so please be short for me, Ndata Mohale. There's a chapter that you say corruption cripples progress. This is something we've heard over and over again. What do you think of the World Bank giving South Africa yet another loan? A lot of people saying if used properly, it'll help us. But I think a lot of people are despondent in South Africa in terms of our politicians and if they can actually use the money properly.
We are already over indebted. Before COVID, we were borrowing at a rate of 2.1 billion a day, every day. We were spending 20 billion just on servicing debt. Where it's going now, we are approaching 20% of what we collect every year of our national GDP on just servicing debt. So we stole the 500 billion socio-economic stimulus in response to the pandemic. People who call ourselves our leaders stole even from the mouths of babies, the sick, the infirm, and dying, when in Gauteng they stole 2/3 of PPE. You see, you have to love your people to lead them.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for your time. Bonang Mohale, an author as well. This is the book that we were referring to and talking a little bit about. I would suggest you do go out there and get it.